Dear children, in this class, we are going to learn about the next lesson, lesson number 4, Louis Pasteur, Conqueror of Disease. Hope you are all having your textbook before you. Keep a pencil with you. This lesson is written by E.H. Carter, and the source of this lesson is Pioneers of the Modern World. E. H. Carter, his full name is Edward Henry Carter. He was born in 1876 and he was died in the year 1937. So, children, the scientific inventions are very helpful for each and everyone in our day to day life. So whatever you do, so whatever the works you see, whatever the inventions you see, so like TV, the monitor, the computer, whatever, I'm sitting before you, and then mixer, grinder, mobile phone, and many more, right? So all the scientific inventions, they are very helpful for us in everyday's life. You know about Louis Pasteur. He was he was from France. He is a French biologist, microbiologist, and a chemist. And his remarkable inventions that you might be knowing, they are principles of vaccination, microbial fermentation, and the most valuable one is pasteurization, which we every day at home we do. So when we boil the milk at home, so there we apply the principle of pasteurization. That is the gift which is given by Louis Pasteur. So now let us get into the lesson. The heading, it says Louis Pasteur, conqueror of disease. What is meant by conqueror? One who wins. What has he won? He has won disease. He has won over disease. Let's get into the lesson now. On the field of battle in one of his campaigns, Napoleon decorated for bravery a certain tanner named Pasteur. This brave soldier had an equally brave son, Louis Pasteur, born 7 years after Waterloo. He was not a soldier, but he was a fighter. Dear children, here the writer says about Louis Pasteur's father. What was he? He was a tanner. Tanner is the person who makes animal skin into leather, who turns animal skin into leather. What was he? He was a tanner. At the same time, he was a soldier. On the field of battle in one of his campaigns, in whose campaigns? In Napoleon Bonaparte's campaigns, Napoleon decorated means Napoleon gave him a medal. Whom did he give the medal? Whom did he decorate? He decorated for bravery a certain tanner named Pasteur. Pasteur, Pasteur was honored by Napoleon Bonaparte. This brave soldier, that is, the brave soldier, Pasteur, had an equally brave son. Who was he? He was Louis Pasteur. Born 7 years after Waterloo, after the War of Waterloo, Louis Pasteur was born after 7 years. He was not a soldier. Underline this statement. He was not a soldier, but he was a fighter. Who was not a soldier? Louis Pasteur was not a soldier. He was a fighter. But what did he fight? The writer says over here that he was not a soldier. Was Louis Pasteur a soldier? No, he wasn't. But what was he? He was a fighter and he fought disease. Second paragraph is here. He fought disease. He devoted his life to the study of what we sometimes call germs, which men of science call bacteria, a Greek word meaning little rods. Bacteria are vegetable organisms, little rod-shaped plants which exist in the air, water, and soil, and in the bodies of animals and plants. Some, but not all, are the causes of diseases. Some convert matter into food for plants. He fought disease. The writer says, E.H. Carter says that he fought disease. Who fought disease? Louis Pasteur fought disease. That's why he has called him as a fighter. He was not a fighter, he was not a soldier, he did not take part in war. He took part to help the people. He took part to help the people to fight against disease. That's why he is called as a fighter here. He devoted his life to the study of what we sometimes call germs. We call it as germs, but men of science, they call it as what? They call it as bacteria, a Greek word meaning little rods. What is the meaning of bacteria? Bacteria means little rods. That's the meaning that's a Greek word, and the meaning is little rods. Then what are bacteria? Children, the plural form of bacteria is bacteria only. So what are bacteria? Bacteria are vegetable organisms. What are they? They are vegetable organisms, and they are little rod-shaped plants. How do they look? They are very little rod-shaped plants which exist in the air, water, and soil. Where do they exist? They exist in the air, water, and soil, and in the bodies of animals. Even in us, even in our body, we have bacteria. And plants, even in the plants too, they are present. Even in the plants also, the bacteria are present. Some, but not all, are the causes of diseases. We think that bacteria are the reason for all the diseases. No, that's wrong. The writer says that bacteria are some bacteria, some, but not all, are the all are the causes of diseases. Just a few, they make they create some disease in the body, but not all. Some are very helpful and some are very essential to our body. And what some other bacteria do? Some convert matter into food for plants. For plants also, these bacteria are helpful. Some bacteria, they convert food, then they convert the matter into food. The matter will be converted into food in the plants with the help of some bacteria. I hope these two paragraphs are clear to you. Let's move on to the next paragraph. Just kindly underline there, what are bacteria? Little bacteria are vegetable organisms. Just underline that bacteria are vegetable organisms, little rod-shaped plants which exist in the air, water, and soil, and in the bodies of animals and plants. Some, but not all, are the causes of diseases. Some convert matter into food for plants. Nikhil, Nikhil, what are bacteria? Nikhil S. What are bacteria?
Bacteria are vegetable organisms,
Hmm.
little rod-shaped plants which
Hmm.
exist in the air, water, and soil,
Hmm.
and bodies of animals and plants.
Okay, that's right. Nivedita,
Uh,
what are bacteria?
Bacteria are vegetable organisms, little rod-shaped plants
Hmm.
which exist in the air, water, and soil, and in the bodies of animals and plants.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Sumit,
Sir.
where do bacteria exist?
In air, water, and soil,
Hmm.
the bodies of animals and plants.
Yeah, they exist in the air, water, and soil, even in the bodies of animals and plants. Okay, thank you. Now let's move on. Third paragraph. Louis Pasteur had a very busy and interesting life. He not only made some exciting discoveries about germs, but he was able to use his discoveries in very practical ways. He worked hard in his laboratory with test tubes and all kinds of experiments. But nearly all the time he was working to help people who were suffering in some special way from disease. Okay, let's just see. Louis Pasteur had a very busy and interesting life. Yeah, being a scientist, he was too busy. His life was so busy. And it was interesting. His life was really interesting. He not only made some exciting discoveries about germs, but he was able to use his discoveries in very practical ways. We see some scientists, they make discoveries, but whether they are useful in the whether they are really useful and in the day-to-day life or not, they don't think. But Louis Pasteur, he didn't do that. His complete intention was to make that practically. In the practical ways, he did it. He worked hard in his laboratory with test tubes and all kinds of experiments, but nearly all the time he was working to help people who were suffering in some special way from disease. Underline this. To help people who are suffering in some special way from disease. The people who are suffering from special ways, especially the poor people, he wanted to help them. Dear children, from this, what can we learn? If one or the other day, you too may become a scientist, or you too may become a teacher or an engineer or whatever. On that time, do remember about the poor people. Help them. Whatever the help you can do, whatever the help you can give to them, that you give. You have to. So, take Louis Pasteur as a model and go ahead. He helped the poor people who are suffering in some special way from disease. He tried to help them. Among the people whom Pasteur was able to help were brewers, breeders of silkworms, and cow keepers, all of whom were trying to carry on important industries in France. Pasteur was always very proud of being able to help his country in this way. How can we help our country? If we help the industries, if we help the public sector, so through that we can help our country. Here, among the people whom Pasteur was able to help were brewers. Who are brewers? The people who make beer, they are called as, or they are named as brewers. Who is a brewer? The one who makes beer is called as a brewer. He helped the brewers. And whom did he help? He helped the breeders of silkworm, those who are breeding silkworm, those who are growing silkworm, those who are taking care of silkworms. And the cow keepers, he helped the cow keepers, all of whom were trying to carry on important industries in France. These were the important industries in France. The brewers were there, breeders were there, breeders of silkworms were there, and then cow keepers were there. Louis Pasteur thought to help them. He tried to help them. Pasteur was always very proud of being able to help his country in this way. In this way, he wanted to help his country. And he was being able to help his country. He was happy for that. What must be our intention? Our ultimate intention must be helping our country. We have to help our country. We must help our country. We must help the poor people. That must be our ultimate aim. Gaining money, yeah, we have to gain. Gaining respect from others, of course, we have to. Gaining prestige and everything, yeah, we need it. But more than that, the most important thing is helping the poor people. Help the poor people and make it as your motive of your life. Now, let us move on to the next paragraph, the fourth paragraph. Louis Pasteur, born in a little French con- uh, country town, was interested in chemistry when he was very young. After studying hard in Paris and showing great promise, he began to teach and lecture as professor of chemistry. Louis Pasteur, actually, Louis Pasteur was born in the year 1822 on 27th December. On 27th December 1822, Louis Pasteur was born. It's not given in the text, but just keep it in your mind. He was born on 27 December 1822. Who was his father? His name is just given as Pasteur there, but actually his father's name is Jean Joseph Pasteur. He was a soldier. At the same time, he was a tanner. Who was his mother? His mother was Jean Roquel Pasteur. He was born in a little, Louis Pasteur was born in a little French country town. And in which subject he was more interested? He was very much interested in chemistry. Underline that. In which subject he was interested? He was interested in chemistry. When he was young, he was very much interested. He was paying more attention towards chemistry. After studying hard in Paris and showing great promise, he began to teach and lecture as professor of chemistry. He became the professor of chemistry and he started to teach, he started to give lectures to the students. He became a professor at Strasbourg in Alsace and he married a wife who was always to be his closest companion and assistant. Sorry, and assistant. Now you might have laughed by looking at the sentence. He married a wife, right? Yes, he married a person who became his wife. Who was she and how was she? He married a wife, he married a lady who was always to be his closest companion and assistant. She assisted him and she was the closest companion of Louis Pasteur. Who was she? What was her name? Her name was Mary Pasteur. Who was she? Her name was Mary Pasteur. And how was she? She was always supporting him. She was the closest companion of Louis Pasteur and assistant. She assisted him a lot in his scientific research, in scientific works. Hope you have understood. He became a professor at Strasbourg in Alsace. So what did he become? He became a professor at Strasbourg in Alsace, and then he married. He married the lady Mary Pasteur, who always to be his closest companion and assistant. She was his assistant. She helped him a lot to complete his scientific research. Let's move on to the next paragraph. Paragraph number 5. Pasteur was deeply interested in all the new experiments that were being made in chemistry and decided to solve some of the difficult problems that were worrying chemists and other scientists. Sometimes he used to sit for hours, quite silent and motionless, thinking hard about one of his difficulties. He found this the easiest way to solve a problem. And when he thought of a solution, his kind, tired looking face would brighten with pleasure and excitement, and he would rush around to tell his discovery to his wife and to others who were helping him. Pasteur was deeply interested in all the new experiments. In what he was very much interested, he was deeply interested in all the new experiments. He thought of some new experiments and he did it. He achieved it that were being made in chemistry and decided to solve some difficult problems that were worrying the chemists. Who is a chemist? A person who engages his life in chemical research is a chemist. He thought of helping the chemists. The chemists were having some troubles in their life while making the research. He tried to solve the difficulties of them and other scientists. Sometimes he used to sit for hours. How did he solve the problems? Yes, by sitting quite silent and motionless for hours, for many hours, he tried to find out the solution. Thinking hard about one of his difficulties, he sat in the same place by being quite silent and motionless, and he tried to find out the solution. And when he thought of a solution, he found this the easiest way to solve a problem. That means, even in our life, we too get lots of problems. What to do? We start to type in Google, right? I'm having lots of headache. I'm troubling. How can I get the help? We just Google it. No need to Google. No need to say to some others, the solution is here. Just be quiet. Be quiet and sit silently. Be motionless in the sense, don't move anywhere. Just be in the place where you are. Think of the problem first. Think of the problem what you are facing. After some times, you will definitely get the solution. That's what Louis Pasteur, being a scientist, he did it. And when he thought of a solution, his kind, tired looking face would brighten with pleasure and excitement. Now think of the situation when you're sitting to write an examination. A problem is given, you don't know the solution, you will sit quietly, you will start to think about the solution of the problem. One of a sudden, you will get the answer. What will you do? Will you shout? No. Your face brightens up with pleasure. In the same way, Louis Pasteur, when he was trying to find out the solution, when he thought of a solution, his face would brighten up with pleasure and excitement. And what would he do? Yes, he would rush round to tell his discovery to his wife and to others who were helping him. This shows the kind-heartedness of Louis Pasteur. He was really kind. After finding the solution, he was rushing to his wife, the one who was helping him. He was rushing And then he was rushing to the scientists who were helping him in his difficult tasks. That's what Louis Pasteur did. Now, can anybody say how did Pasteur solve the difficult problems? Raise your hands. How did Pasteur solve the difficult problems? Raise your hands, please. How did Louis Pasteur find? How did Louis Pasteur solve the difficult problems? How did he solve it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just a few members have raised their hands. Just a few hands are raised. What about others? Bhuvana will answer me now. Bhuvana?
Sir, it's
Yeah.
audible. Sir, it's audible.
Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Sir, he used to sit for hours, quite silent and motionless,
Yeah.
thinking hard about one of his difficulties.
Yes.
To found easiest way to solve that problem.
Yeah. Will it be helpful to you, Bhuvana?
Yes, sir, sometimes.
Yeah, of course, right? We have to inculcate this habit. Thank you. I'll move on with Neha R. Neha R. How did
Yes,
he
sir.
solve the difficult problems?
He used to sit alone for hours, quite silent and motionless,
Yeah.
thinking hard about one of his difficulties.
Hmm.
He found this was the easiest way to solve a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. Children, just underline those lines. Sometimes he used to sit for us, quite silent and motionless, thinking hard about one of his difficulties. He found this the easiest way to solve a problem, and when he thought of a solution, his kind, tired looking face would brighten with pleasure and excitement. Okay, so Pannaga, will it
Yes,
be
sir.
really helpful to you?
Yes, sir. Of
Have
course.
you ever felt the situation? Have you ever
Yes, sir.
faced it?
Sometime.
How will it be helpful to you, Pannaga?
Sir, when we will be quiet and silent, our mind will be relaxed.
Yeah,
So we can think of some solution to
exactly.
overcome the problem.
Truly, right. Okay, thank you, Pannaga. So we need to be cool and calm first. So when we are facing some troubles, our mind will not be constant, right? So first try to make it constant. Give some time to it. Be relaxed. You are really having the solution just within you. That really helps. Okay, now this is the time to move on to sixth paragraph. In 1854, Pasteur was appointed head of a college of science at Lille, a busy manufacturing town in the northeast of France. He was pleased about this because he always felt that trades and industries could be helped very much by the research of men of science. His chance to be useful soon came. In which year he was appointed as the head of a college of science? Tejas, in which year Louis Pasteur was appointed as the head of a college of science? Tejas, Tejas, are you there? Tejas. Akshay S. Hegde. Tejas has not responded. Akshay S. Hegde. In which year Louis Pasteur was appointed as the head of a college of science?
54.
In which year?
1854.
Yeah. Tejas has responded. What about Akshay S. Hegde? Akshay? Network might be weak. No issues. In the year 1854, Louis Pasteur was appointed as the head of a college of science at Lille. This was so actually this is the busiest town in the northeast of France, and it is famous for manufacturing. He was pleased about this because he always felt that trades and industries could be helped. Who could be helped? Trades and industries could be helped very much by whom? By the research of men of science. The scientific inventions will be really helpful to whom? Will be really helpful to the trades and industries of of the country. His chance to be useful soon came. The dream, what was he looking for? The dream which was he looking for was come true. Was very soon to come true. He was going to make that dream come true. Paragraph number 7. Pasteur, as a young chemist, had always been interested in the problems of why and how living things decay, why milk turns sour, why meat goes bad, why wine ferments. Okay, now look at this. Pasteur, as a young chemist, just being a young chemist, he had been always interested. He had always been interested in the problems of why and how living things decay. The first question is how living things decay. This was the first question. Why milk turns sour? Why meat goes bad? Yes, meat goes bad sometimes. Why it is? What is the reason? Why wine ferments? What is meant by ferment? Ferment means changes by means of a chemical reaction involving yeast or bacteria. By involving yeast or bacteria, the chemical changes will happen. So that's what we call as fermentation. He started to give some lectures in Lille on fermentation. Who started to give lectures in Lille on fermentation? Louis Pasteur started to give the lectures about fermentation in Lille. One of the chief industries in Lille was the manufacture of alcohol from beetroot. From beetroot, one manufacturing industry was preparing alcohol, and he was fortunate in being able to carry out experiments in some of the breweries. One manufacturer consulted Pasteur about his beer, which was turning out badly, and Pasteur, by helping this brewer, managed to discover all sorts of things that he did not know before about yeast. Yeast is used to make beer foam and bread rise up lightly. Pasteur became certain that yeast was alive, made up of tiny living cells. When these cells were healthy, the yeast acted well, but if they were diseased, the yeast and the beer went wrong. What the writer explains over here, one of the chief industries in Lille was the manufacture of alcohol from beetroot, and he was fortunate. Louis Pasteur was fortunate in being able to carry out the experiments. He did the experiments for those manufacturers who were manufacturing alcohol from beetroot. In some breweries, his invention was really helpful. One manufacturer consulted Pasteur about his beer. On one fresh day, one manufacturer who was manufacturing beer, he contacted Louis Pasteur, which was turning out badly, which was going out wrong. And Pasteur, by helping this brewer, managed to discover all sorts of things that he did not know before about yeast. Earlier, he was not knowing much more about yeast. And on that moment, when that person contacted Louis Pasteur, he started to think about yeast. He started to know more about yeast. Why yeast is helpful? Yeast is used to make beer foam. Of on the beer, so in the beer, you will be able to see foam. So that will be created with the help of this yeast. Bread rise up lightly. So many of you have become the best cooks in this time, right? At the time of Corona holidays, many of you, some girls and boys, have become the best cooks, and they have come to know the importance of yeast also. Many have tried to prepare bread. They have prepared bread at home on their own, and those children have really come to know the use of yeast. Pasteur became certain that yeast was alive. Yes, he came to know the reality that it was alive, made up of tiny living cells. With the help of tiny living cells, it was made up of. The yeast was made up of tiny living cells. Pasteur became certain that yeast was alive, made up of tiny living cells. When these cells were healthy, the yeast acted well. If the cells were perfect, if the cells of the yeast were perfect, they were healthy, then the yeast acted well. If not, what would have happened? But if they were diseased, if the cells were diseased, the yeast, at the same time, the beer went wrong. The people who were manufacturing this beer, they were worried about this, and they brought that matter before Pasteur, and Pasteur started to know more about yeast. After a few days, Pasteur was made director of scientific studies at a famous college in Paris. So after a few days, what happened? He was made as the director of scientific studies at a famous college. Where was it? It was in Paris. He was still thinking about decay and yeast and germs. And one of the problems that he was trying to answer was this. Underline this statement, the next statement. Do germs form from other germs, or do they just come of themselves? Do they really come of themselves, or do they form from other germs? The question is, do germs form from other germs, or do they just come of themselves? People like Pasteur believed that germs were carried in the air and might infect other things. What was the belief of Louis Pasteur and other scientists? They believed that germs were carried from where? They were carried in the air and might infect other things that came in contact. The germs which came in contact would make the thing wrong with them. Others believed in what they called spontaneous generation. That is, they believed that germs had no parents but just occurred by themselves. What was their belief? What was the belief of some other people, apart of Louis Pasteur and some scientists? They believed, the people apart from Louis Pasteur and other scientists, those people, they believed in spontaneous generation. That means spontaneous generation means the belief that germs have no parents. understand this concept. You might have already come to know about spontaneous generation in your science classes. What is the belief here? The belief that germs have no parents. They don't have any parents. Parent germs are not there for germs, and according to them, they occur by themselves. There are no parent germs, they occur by themselves. But what was the belief of Pasteur? Did Pasteur believe in spontaneous generation? Aniket Hegde? Children, if the meeting ends after 5 minutes, just come back and join the same link and come back to the class. Aniket, can you answer me? Did Pasteur believe spontaneous generation? Did he believe in spontaneous generation? Aniket? Okay. Aniket, microphone is not working. No issues. Vidya Shetty will respond me. Vidya,
Sir.
did Louis Pasteur believe in spontaneous generation?
No, sir.
Can you please explain his thought about germs?
Sir, he thought that do germs form from other germs, or just they come from themselves?
That is the question which came to his mind. Then,
Yes.
what is the answer?
Plaster thought that believed that germs were carried in air and might infect other things that come in contact with them.
Of course, of course. Okay, thank you. So now, after this, he had to go with the solution, right? He had to invent something. After inventing something, he would have gone with some other solution. So for that, what did he do? Just wait for a while and just join the class once again, children, because the meeting will end soon. I'll end up this session and I'll come back again. So join the same link and be in the class. The class is not ended. Come back once again.